Today I'm recording a special edition of Essential English Words. As I record this, we are in the middle of Cyclone Alfred here in Brisbane. These words are very important and has been used a lot during the last few days in these very difficult times in Brisbane for many people. Without further ado, I will begin here with a short passage incorporating the first 8 words, which will describe the Cyclone Alfred emergency. As Cyclone Alfred intensified, authorities ordered the evacuation of low-lying suburbs in Brisbane and the Gold Coast, urging residents to leave before floodwaters became too dangerous. Emergency services were on high alert, ready to assist with rescue operations as the storm approached landfall along the Queensland coast. The cyclone caused massive disruption, shutting down public transport and closing major highways due to flooding and debris. Strong gusts of wind exceeding 120 kilometers an hour battered homes, tearing off roofs and toppling trees across the region. In some areas, entire streets were inundated, with flood waters reaching the second floors of houses. Officials warned residents to remain indoors as the storm still posed a major hazard, with fallen power lines and rising water levels creating life-threatening conditions. Thousands of homes and businesses were left without power as widespread outages crippled communication networks and emergency response efforts. As Cyclone Alfred intensified, authorities ordered the evacuation of low-lying suburbs in Brisbane and Gold Coast, urging residents to leave before floodwaters became too dangerous. Emergency services were on high alert, ready to assist with rescue operations as the storm approached landfall along the Queensland coast. The cyclone caused massive disruption, shutting down public transport and closing major highways due to flooding and debris. Strong gusts of wind exceeding 120 kilometers an hour battered homes, tearing off roofs and toppling trees across the region. In some areas, entire streets were inundated, with floodwaters reaching the second floors of houses. Officials warned residents to remain indoors as the storm still posed a major hazard, with fallen power lines and rising water levels creating life-threatening conditions. Thousands of homes and businesses were left without power as widespread outages crippled communication networks and emergency response efforts. So that was the passage. We will isolate and examine each of the 8 words in detail, still in the context of emergency of Cyclone Alfred of Brisbane 2025, which is happening just right now as I'm recording. 1. Evacuation. Authorities ordered the evacuation of thousands of residents in Brisbane and Gold Coast as floodwaters surged overnight. Example 2. Evacuation centres have been set up across Queensland and northern New South Wales to assist displaced families. Emergency crews carried out multiple rescues in flooded suburbs of Brisbane using boats to reach stranded residents. On the Gold Coast, swiftwater rescue teams pulled several people to safety after they were caught in rapidly rising waters. 3. Landfall. Cyclone Alfred made landfall along Queensland coast, unleashing destructive winds and torrential rains. As the storm approached landfall, emergency services in Brisbane and surrounding regions urged people to stay indoors. 4. Disruption. The cyclone caused major disruption to Brisbane's public transport system, with trains and buses suspended due to flooding. Flights to Gold Coast Airport were cancelled as severe weather disrupted air travel across southeast Queensland. 5. Gusts. Wind gusts exceeding 120 kilometers an hour lashed the Gold Coast, bringing down trees and power lines. Brisbane recorded some of the strongest gusts in recent history, damaging rooftops and causing widespread outages. Inundation. Parts of Brisbane's riverfront were completely inundated, with floodwaters swallowing streets and businesses. Heavy rain caused flash flooding and inundation across northern New South Wales, forcing road closures and evacuations. 7. Hazard. Authorities warned that fallen power lines and floating debris pose significant hazards in flooded streets of Brisbane. The combination of strong winds and large ocean swells created a major hazard for coastal communities along the Gold Coast. Outage. Over 200,000 homes and businesses in Brisbane and the Gold Coast were left without power due to widespread outages. The power outage forced hospitals in northern New South Wales to operate on emergency generators. So you can see the situation is quite dire. Many people are affected. To understand the words used better, here are 2 additional examples of sentences for each of the 8 words, illustrating different contexts between Cyclone Alfred and other situations. This will help you see and understand how these words are used in various other situations. 1. Evacuation. The definition is the act of removing people from a dangerous place to a safer location. Example: the fire alarm went off, prompting the immediate evacuation of the office building. During the war, the government ordered the evacuation of civilians from high-risk areas. 2. Rescue. Definition: the act of saving someone or something from a dangerous or harmful situation. Example: the mountain climber had to be airlifted to safety after a dramatic rescue operation. Animal shelters focus on the rescue and rehabilitation of abandoned pets. 3. Landfall. Definition: the arrival of a weather system such as a storm or cyclone on land after traveling across water. The explorers finally made landfall after weeks of sailing across the Pacific Ocean. Migrating birds take rest when they made landfall on small islands during their journey. So in this situation, it does not describe a weather system, but it describes people, explorers making landfall after weeks being in sea. Explorers making landfall after weeks sailing in sea. It also describes migrating birds after flying, making landfall on islands. Number 4, disruption. Definition: a disturbance or interruption to normal activities or systems. A major IT failure caused a disruption in banking services nationwide. This has occurred a few times recently. Example number 2. The teacher had to pause the lesson due to constant disruption from the students. 5. Gusts. Definition: a brief, strong burst of wind. Example: strong gusts of wind made it difficult to keep the umbrella open. The golfer struggled as unexpected gusts altered the direction of the ball. 6. Inundation. Definition: the flooding or overwhelming of a place with water or something else in a large quantities. After the company's new product launch, they faced an inundation of customer inquiries. Social media users experienced an inundation of ads related to their recent searches. So here, inundation is related to other things than water. Something in large quantities. Inundation of inquiries, inundation of ads in those two examples above. Definition: a danger or risk that could harm. Examples: leaving sharp objects on the floor poses a hazard to small children. Workers in the chemical plant must wear protective gear due to potential hazards. Number 8. Outage. Definition: a period when a service such as electricity or the internet is unavailable. The entire neighborhood experienced a power outage after a technical failure at the plant. We had actually experienced a power outage last night, but it was during our sleep time, so it did not impact us a great deal because when we woke up, the power came back on again. Next example: the company's website went down due to a server outage, affecting thousands of users. So these words that we have been using describes what happens in a natural disaster, such as Cyclone Alfred. Behind me, you can see the constant rain pelting down on my window. Next, we will examine 8 more words that are used by the media and journalists at this dangerous time that people are feeling in Brisbane. See you soon for the next episode, part 2.